Hello students, we're going to continue with our discussion on the impact of socioeconomic status on education. Now, in addition to the differences noted in the provision of basic needs and experiences, differences are noted in the level of parental involvement. Research has shown that higher SES parents are generally more involved in their children's schooling and other activities. Now, does this mean that the lower SES parents don't care as much? Let's look at this picture. Now, here we see a caregiver, and if we look at the caption behind her, we're seeing me, I, me. Right? It seems as though she's centered on herself and her own activities. And she seems oblivious to the fact that the four children are standing there waiting for some attention. The first boy seems to have won a trophy, and he may have just graduated from primary school. The second girl has some pom-poms in her hand, and maybe she's a cheerleader, and her mother was supposed to come see her cheer at a game. The other boy seems to have a book in his hand, and there's another girl. Now, she does seem rather preoccupied. But does it mean that she doesn't care as much? Not necessarily. Sometimes, parents even have to bring their work at home. Here we see a little girl very excitedly coming to her dad and trying to get him to look at whatever drawing she has done. And he's talking, keep on talking, I'm listening, but he's not making eye contact, his back is to her, and he seems to be at a computer monitor. So although he's there physically, he's still not spending quality time with her because of the demands of work. Time spent working, sometimes working at 2 or more jobs, proves to be a major obstacle to school involvement for low SES parents. Now, as you can see, it's a juggling act to meet life's many demands, so paying the bills often takes precedence over being involved in the children's school activities. So with the dad we saw before, he's at home, he's in the house, so technically he may be babysitting while the mother is out at work, but even though he's there, he still doesn't have time to be having quality interactions with his child. Now, does verbal communication matter? When we think in terms of high SES versus lower SES, here we see a father and his young son. The father seems to be reading a magazine. He is focused on the magazine, and from the position of his hand, he seems to be pointing out words as he's reading along. If we look at the little one, his eyes are focused on the magazine. His mouth is also open. So maybe as the dad is reading along, he is also repeating what his father is saying. Remember Bandura's social cognitive theory with respect to language development? Dr. Jackman spoke about that a couple of weeks ago. Now we're going to listen to some excerpts of a calypso called Child Training. It was sung by a composer in 1969, and he continues to sing it. And the words or the lyrics of the calypso are still very relevant today. So let's have a listen.
Make them intelligent. You could stop them from coming delinquent or violent. But some want to come out stupid. Don't listen ignorant. For listen how some of you parents just talk to you all in fun.
when we listen to that calypso, we hear composer talking about a parent of low SES status, and the parent is not talking to the child as though, well, the child will be able to understand anything more than some very simple baby talk. He then goes on to compare the verbalizations of a parent of a higher socioeconomic status, and he compares the way that that parent would speak to his or her child. Let's listen to the way he sees a parent of a higher socioeconomic status speaking to his or her child.
How they treat their children from small. When they take up a little infant, you wouldn't hear such nonsense at all. You could stop on the side and notice. They never talk such damn stupidness, but they will flash a big smile without getting vile and talk to the child like this. Hello, young fellow. How are you? What's your name? Where's your daddy? But my people, tickle, tickle, tickle. Yap it, yap it, yap it. Get the bubuyush, get the bubuyush.
So yes, this is how he noted the difference between the way that a parent of a higher socioeconomic status would speak to his or her own child. Now, remember this was 1969 when he sang this calypso, and he didn't have the benefit of doing any empirical research. Remember, Dr. Jackman discussed research in, I think it would have been maybe the first online video. So we learned about how do we collect data and information. But here, he is just using what we would call anecdotal evidence. These are things that he has heard in his environment, and he is saying that persons of one social class or one socioeconomic status would speak to their child in one way, and persons of a different socioeconomic status would speak to their child in a different way. And of course, he goes on in parts of the song to tell of the differences in the outcomes, because what he says is basically that for the parents who speak to their child as though they can understand them, that is the ones with a higher socioeconomic status, those children have a much better outcome. Let's continue. So, in general, high SES parents ask more questions, they explain the causes of events, they provide reasons for rules. Now, when we hear these three, it makes us think of something. Now remember, in class we discussed different parenting styles, and this sounds very authoritative. And yes, in fact, we will see in the text that research has shown that parents of a higher socioeconomic status tend to adopt a more authoritative parenting style. Additionally, high SES parents talk to their children differently, as we saw just now when we listened to composer's calypso. Their language is more elaborate, their directions are clearer, and they are more likely to encourage problem solving. We now look at attitudes and values. Now, the impact of SES is also transmitted through parental attitudes and values. Now, generally, most parents teach their children values like honesty and loyalty. Children who see their parents reading and studying learn that reading is important and are very likely to read in their spare time. So not only values like loyalty, etc., but also values like the importance of reading a newspaper, keeping up to date with news, and just reading in general. Research shows that students who read at home achieve higher at reading than those who don't. Expectations. High SES parents have higher expectations for their children. They encourage them to perform well in both primary and secondary school, and then they steer them on course to university. In other words, they are effective managers of their children's lives. Low SES parents, in contrast, tend to have lower aspirations for their children. They may lack the knowledge about prerequisite courses, so their children may lose out on opportunities because they may not have taken foundation courses. Many low SES parents, in fact, are content if or when their children complete high school. Now, there are some cautions and implications for teachers. Eggen and Kouchak caution us to be mindful of the influence of individual differences with respect to the effect of SES on outcomes. That is, the research findings describe group differences. But as we know, there will be variations within the groups. We all know persons whose outcomes did not conform to the expectations of their respective groups. In fact, Eggen and Kouchak, the authors of this text, revealed that both came from low SES backgrounds. However, both were able to overcome adversities and are successful because they were provided with enriched experiences. Conversely, simply belonging to a high SES family does not guarantee success. That is, yes, there are certain characteristics associated with parenting and so on of persons of the high SES group, but again, individual differences. Some persons may not display such qualities. So schools that are safe and nurturing and demanding, and teachers with high expectations who use effective strategies can make a significant difference in all students' lives. So students, the ball is in your court. Make a difference. We have a little introspection exercise to do in order to complete this. Now, after all that has been discussed with respect to the role of SES in academic achievement, think about your own SES and your own academic achievement. Which, if any of the factors discussed, impacted you the most? What helped you to get to this stage? After all, you are in university. So after reflecting on your own experiences, write the 3 most powerful influences of SES on your academic achievement. And come to the next class prepared to share your experiences. So thank you and see you next class.